Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all very welcome to webinar number 24 in the Irish Bioenergy Association webinar series. This morning's webinar is slightly different in that it's a longer session. It's a 2-hour session. We're talking about the support scheme for renewable heat. My name is Sean Finan. I'm CEO of the Irish Bioenergy Association, and I do apologise for a slight delay in our starting time this morning. We had some minor technical challenges, but we've overcome them thankfully, and we're now live. So this morning we have an action-packed agenda for you to outline many aspects associated with the support scheme for renewable heat. And to open our proceedings this morning, we're delighted to be joined by William Walsh, who is the CEO of the SEAI. So William will briefly address you to open this morning's event. So I now hand over to William for you to give your brief introduction. Thanks, William.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sean. And I'd like to apologise to all attendees this morning. The few technical issues my end. So the folks in RB have been very good in helping me sort them out. So good morning to all attendees. I'm delighted to be invited to say some opening words to the webinar today. The webinar is very much supporting SEAI's work, and we're very happy to be partnering with RB to promote the SSRH scheme. I want to thank RB and specifically Sean Finan and Paddy Phelan in this regard. The SSRH is an important government initiative to incentivise the uptake of renewable heat in Ireland. As the scheme administrator, we in SEAI are keen to make it a success to deliver the renewable heat and supporting development of the Irish supply chain. The programme for government and now the Climate Action Bill has firmly set the level of ambition for emissions reductions in Ireland. 7% annually, 51% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. Hugely ambitious targets. Ireland is emerging as a leader of renewable electricity generation mix on our grid, with the plan to extend this to 70% during this next time frame. In the domestic sector, this will pay dividends with the strategy of BER, B2 home upgrades and the transition to electrify heat using heat pumps. Electric vehicle charging will offset transportation fuel, and microgeneration will also contribute. The decarbonisation of heat is a complex and one that we're not doing so well. 94% of Ireland's energy for heat still comes from fossil fuels, and it accounts for 35% of our annual energy-related emissions. SEAI's role is to provide support and evidence-based advice to the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications on policy. SEAI is working on a national heat study with detailed assessment of the potential for efficient heating and cooling in Ireland. We are providing thorough analysis of the appropriate policy mix to achieving the decarbonisation target by 2050, including the role and viability that bioenergy will play. We are assessing viable technology and fuel options. We are assessing the potential for district heat, including the role of waste heat and renewable sources of heat. We are assessing the decarbonisation of industrial heat, including the opportunity and challenges to electrify heat in an important area for insights. The National Heat Study will include cost-benefit analysis and provide scenario-based insight for policy development. Everything has been considered: bioenergy, availability of bioenergy, biomethane, hydrogen, heat networks, thermal generation technologies, carbon capture, and utilisation and storage. Additional valuable outcomes of this work include wide stakeholder engagement and an enhanced national energy modelling framework to be used for ongoing policy analysis. This work is well advanced and will complete in the summer. The SSRH scheme is operational with Exchequer support of 300 million over 15 years for biomass and the grant aiding of heat pump heating systems. The SSRH has an objective to support 1,300 gigawatts of renewable heat in the non-ETS sector. This represents 3% of heat from renewable generation. Although progress has been slow, we're still at the early stages of a rollout on a scheme that will support businesses over a 15-year period for biomass or anaerobic digestion biogas heating systems. The scheme can remain open for applications until 2025 or until it achieves its renewable heat target. The first 50 installations supported represent just 40 gigawatts of annual renewable heat. We are encouraged, however, to see an increased uptake over the last few months and now have close to 100 applications into the scheme. These are predominantly from agribusiness sector, with the hospitality and care home sector also featuring. In terms of scale in heat capacity, projects to date are predominantly in the lower tiers of tariff support for heat consumption. It represents support for the Irish SME sector who are early adopters in the scheme. The last 18 months have been very disruptive with ongoing impacts of Brexit and of course the COVID-19 pandemic. Climate action is a necessary consideration for businesses also to be competitive in their marketplace. Also perhaps an opportunity to innovate and turn to an advantage as early actors. SEI would encourage all businesses to examine both heat supply, heat, energy demand, energy efficiency, and options for energy supply together. We have an optimum effect. This will have an optimum effect in terms of the emissions and investment value. The scheme, of course, depends on larger projects, for example, providing process heat in the industrial sector. SEI will be promoting the use of biomass to larger industrial heat applications. Success here will be necessary for the scheme to achieve its goal of renewable heat generation and overall scheme value for money and cost effectiveness. Arbia have, of course, been key stakeholders in promoting the bioenergy industry for many years. SEI have worked closely with Arbia in the development of SSRH, its rollout, and now as we are seeking to ramp up the SSRH. This engagement has been particularly important in the early stages of the scheme, when all the initial issues and learnings are being ironed out. We now have several early applicants that have gone all the way through the process from initial project scoping to application, to formal approval, to installation, to inspection, and finally into the payment cycle, which is for them the start of a 15-year journey and a long-term cycle of operational support. I do acknowledge that the journey for the first 10 or 20 applicants was sometimes difficult. It is a necessity as a complex process. However, we are confident that the scheme is ready to ramp up in volume. We have learned a lot with these first projects. The specific requirements at each stage are better documented and better understood by all of us. And this, I will have no doubt, will make the journey easier and the new applicants that are now engaging with the scheme, I know my team in SEA are continuing to improve our operations, documentation and guidance to support future applicants. In summary, I want to reiterate my commitment to the SSRH scheme. I want to see more and more applications coming through the process, and I'm delighted to see the payments starting to flow. Long may it continue. Ray Langton will give more details on the scheme shortly, but I will now hand you back to Paddy as president of Arbia, and I'd like to thank Arbia for the opportunity to speak to the webinar this morning. Thank you.
Thanks very much, William, for your presentation this morning. I know you're a busy man and have to leave us due to other meetings, so I do thank you for taking time out and for your words this morning. Our next speaker this morning is the president of the Irish Bioenergy Association, Paddy Phelan. Paddy is also CEO of the 3 CEA energy agency. So I now hand over to Paddy, who will give his opening address. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in through the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So Paddy, if you could turn on your video, and I think you're unmuted.
Yeah, can you just free me up there? It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. You can just open up the video there. Now,
here we are, Paddy. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Teresa. Welcome everybody to this morning's webinar. My name is Paddy Phelan, and I'm the president of the Irish Bioenergy Association and the chair of the Arbia Council of Members. Arbia was founded in May 1999. Its role is to promote bioenergy industry and to deliver and develop an important sector of Ireland. The organisation is, again, a self-governing association of voluntary members. The majority of our members are made up of the supply chain through installers and suppliers of bioenergy solutions and technologies. And following the launch of the SSRH, some addition of heat users to that sector and representing heat users in terms of our workload across. Again, the membership includes many across farmers, foresters, fuel suppliers, energy development companies, equipment manufacturers, engineers, financiers, tax advisors, and all of the actors in this very important market of bioenergy sector. The SSRH scheme, which we're here to relaunch today, and I say relaunch with great hope and anticipation, that following a very difficult first 2 years of this scheme and significant work in collaboration between IRBA and SEI to unlock many of the challenges that have been identified by those early adopters. We're now confident that the scheme can roll out and see many more applicants making their way through successfully to the 15-year support scheme, which is in place. Key elements to the SSRH are the WFQA Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Programme, which is run and maintained by IRBA and its team. And it's fundamentally important that the fuel that's used across these renewable heat solutions is of the highest quality and standard and the correct moisture content. So the WFQA forms a fundamental foundation to the SSRH programme. Secondly, SEI also runs a list of registered installers and also designers. And design is a critical part to all of these installations across the heat sector, be that across renewable heat, through wood fuel, or through renewable gas, as discussed around green gas installations. So design is a critical part, and fundamentally as part of that, IRBA have played a role in upskilling and training the sectoral needs around these deliveries. So it is, as I identified earlier, it is our sincere and genuine ambition to see this scheme ramp up. Now that we've finally seen some of the early adopters moved on to the payment cycle in the past few months, there's now confidence that there is a process to follow and a somewhat improved and cleared up mechanism and guidelines around its delivery in partnership and close work with SEI and the team that are working very hard in SEI to make this scheme deliver on the scale that is required. So without further ado, I'll hand you back to Sean Finan on behalf of all of the members and all of those in the energy sector and across the SME sector who are considering and looking for alternative solutions around low carbon transition. I would recommend that you give deep consideration to the installation of an SSRH approved heating system, which is to the benefit of 15 years of a support tariff to help with the capital costs and the delivery of a green low carbon heat solution for your business. So thank you all very much.
Thanks very much, Paddy, for your opening words. I'd like to thank you and acknowledge your ongoing work on behalf of the Irish Bioenergy Association as our president, and indeed your work in working with ourselves and SEI on the SSRH to date in terms of addressing issues which have arisen. Our next presenter and our first formal presentation of the morning comes from Ray Langton. Ray is the program manager for the SSRH with SEI. So Ray will give you an overview of the support scheme for renewable heat. He will also give you an update on where the current application process is and the uptake to date. I suppose we do apologise in advance that there are some people on this webinar this morning that probably know quite a bit about the SSRH, but also there are people that have never heard of it before. I suppose the webinar the presentation that Ray is going to give tries to address a broad audience, and any questions that you have, feel free to post them in the Q&A tab, and we will have a brief Q&A session with Ray after his presentation to address queries. I do see some questions already have come in. So it's over to you, Ray. So if you could turn on your camera and start your screen share, that would be great.
Great, thanks, Sean. Just checking that you can hear me there.
We can hear you, Ray, and if you want to just start the
Okay.
share, and that is looking good, Ray. Yeah, thanks
Okay,
very much.
see the
Over to you.
presentation.
We can,
Okay,
can perfectly, Ray. Yeah, we can indeed.
Great. Thanks, Sean, and thanks to Paddy and William for setting the scene. I suppose that the important thing is that you can see the support and that has come from RBA and the commitment at government level and SEAI level to make the support scheme for renewable heat work. So as Sean said, a little bit of an art in trying to mix and match here with some people who maybe don't know a lot about the support scheme, and I see some of the names on the call this morning are quite expert in it. So if there's questions that you need to follow up, by all means, just reach out to us here in the SEI, and we'll do that for you. So look, just to start and set the scene, what is the support scheme for renewable heat? It's a financial incentive, and it's designed to replace fossil fuels. That's what it's all about. That's why we have an SSRH, to get a conversion away from fossil fuel heating systems and replace them either with heat pumps or biomass or biogas heating systems. It is a specific size, but it's quite a big size, supporting 1,300 gigawatt hours of renewable heat. That equates to about 3% of the total heat use in Ireland. So it's a substantial intervention in that heat market, and to try and get an inflection point in the uptake of renewable heat. It's also an opportunity to significantly reduce your carbon footprint, being renewable, obviously. And for agriculture in particular, switching to biomass benefits both the supply chain and delivers direct heat saving costs. So it's renewable heat, it's saving money, it's up and running, and it's now open for applicants. So how does it work? There's two ways that it works. We call it a hybrid scheme. So either a grant, or what's known as investment aid, for heat pumps, air source, ground source, or water source. And I'm going to park that for today. That's the last mention of heat pumps, but I just want to remind people that it is part of the SSRH. Or it's gives operational aid. We call it a tariff, based on the output from heating systems. So that's paid on a quarterly basis, and it runs for 15 years. And that's for biomass heating systems, or for anaerobic digestion heating systems. And that's largely the element that we're talking about here today. So who can apply? What can you heat? What can you do with this heat? So basically, from an applicant's point of view, it's more or less anybody who's not domestic. So it's commercial, industrial, agricultural, public sector, even district heating systems. The one commercial part that's not included in this are the emission trading scheme. So they tend to be very big energy users. Certainly anyone on the call here today, you'll know if you're in the ETS, and not single domestic. So not individual houses or apartments, unless they're a block and part of a district heating system. That's different. So what can you heat? What is eligible heat is the phrase we use. So again, most forms of heat. So space heating, that's heating the rooms, heating a hotel or a nursing home, water heating, process heating in industry. There are some exclusions. So we wouldn't support open spaces. You know, if you think of some of those sort of garage forecourts with just a roof over them, or 3 walls and 1 wall open, we wouldn't support that. Not wood fuel drying, not electricity, heat that's used for electricity generation. So they're quite specific exclusions really there. Obviously the heat has to be produced from an eligible installation, and because it's a payment based on heat output, it has to be metered at the point of use. The other exclusion is a more general exclusion, and it's not heat. We can't support heat that's produced purely for the purpose of SSRH. So as I said at the start, this is a conversion scheme. It's not about generating new heat. So if somebody comes up with a new wild and wonderful use for heat, that's fundamentally not viable at the moment, and they want to do it just because there's SSRH there, we're really not interested in that space. So from a tariff point of view, how does it work? It's based on the usable heat output. As I say, from renewable heating systems, either existing installations that convert. So if you've got an agricultural or a hotel or whatever, and you're using LPG or kerosene, and you convert over to biomass, then your quids in. Or new installations. New installations can apply as well. They have to have what we call a counterfactual. So in other words, it has to be an option and a more economically viable option in the absence of SSRH to put in a fossil fuel system. So if somebody is looking at a new chicken farm and they have an option to put in LPG, but would consider renewables with SSRH support, then that is eligible. We can't support new installations that have to comply. So in some cases, there are building regulations that demand a certain portion of renewability. We can't support something that you have to do for legislative purposes. This is the tariff table. The two column 2 and column 3 that shows the lower and upper limit. They're basically outlining bands here, bands of heat. So megawatt hours is the heat output. So the first 300 comes in at a tariff rate of 5.66 cents per kilowatt. The next 700, then from 300 up to 1,000, and so on and so forth, the different bands. So, and all these bands are cumulative. Sometimes people ask us if I come in at 1,000, for example, does that mean that I get all the 1,000 at the 3.02? No, you do a little bit better than that, and I'll show it to you on the next slide now. So this is just an example, as I said, purely for illustration purposes. All the figures on this will be unique to you and your installation. They're just simply put here to show how we would work through a table. So, and as you can see from the pictures, it's exactly the same whether you're putting a hotel or a chicken farm or an industrial use or a nursing home or whatever. The same principle applies. So every project, depending on what the scale of your project is and depending what you have to do, will have its own cost. This is just one figure that's put there. The eligible heat output will be unique to you, to the size of your office building or to the size of your mushroom farm or whatever. And in this case, we're just using the example of 1,100 megawatt hours. So the SSRH support in that case would be 38,620 euros per year for 15 years. And this is how it's made up. So the first 300, as I said on the previous slide, comes in at the 56.6. So if it had stopped at 300, the payment would be 16,980. The next 700 comes in at 30.2, giving you another 21,140. And in this case, there's 100 goes into the third band. The band rate is getting smaller, obviously. But again, there's another 500 there, and the total comes out in that particular case at 38,620. So again, this is what I would call part of the scoping, and I'll talk about scoping later. This is where you should start. So if you're on this call and you're using kerosene or LPG or any other fossil fuel, start with your bills. Get your bills out. Work out how much energy you've been using, and do a rough cut as to what it would mean for you, and it will be unique to your size. Then, depending on your fuel, in this case, I'm showing natural gas for that size, and these figures change every day, as we know the prices of fuel goes up and down. But at the time I did this slide, the natural gas for that kind of heat output would be about 55,000. If you're using kerosene or you're using LPG, it'd be more. Wood pellets would come in this case, about 65,000. And I put in an extra operational cost just to, I suppose, make the point that there is some extra handling in biomass in general. But again, this will depend on your circumstances. And in this particular example, you put all those figures into the mix and you get a saving of 23,600 per year for 15 years. So where do you start? So if you're, as I say, sitting on this call wondering about SSRH and what it can offer, What I just talked about is what I regard as scoping, sort of back of the envelope calculations based on everything starts with your heat bills. So go back to what you have been using, really understand them. I suppose the one of the watch outs there is to understand that it is heat delivered. So heat delivered is a little bit less than heat purchased. And what I mean by that is there's an efficiency element. So if you buy oil into a tank, the actual heat delivered will depend on your boiler, and it will be typically 75 or 80% of that will actually convert into heat that will go through a meter. So just keep that element in mind. But the scoping would allow you to do the thoughts that I just did there on the previous slide, and that's where you make the decision as to whether there's something in this for you. If there is, you have to move to a more professional stage, for want of a better description. And it all hangs around what we would call the design report. So now you're into detailed technical design, and you'll need that to make the application. The application is not a simple process. It does demand a lot of technical input, and depending on your own expertise, you may need support to do that. And I'll talk about the design in a few moments. You'll also need quite a lot of documentation to demonstrate your own bona fideness as an application, and that's all online on the SEAI process. There'll be back and forward, inevitably there's back and forward between your design engineer and the SEAI, queries back and forward about the sizing and so on and so forth, about the certification of your boiler. Lots of detail will go on back, as I say, back and forward. And that will end in a letter of offer. So you get a formal offer from SEAI, and it's linked entirely to the design. So this is, I suppose, a bit like a planning process where you're applying to your county council to build a building. It all hangs out of the design. So the letter of offer is for a very specific design. So it's a very specific size, very specific boiler, in a very specific use, your farm, your hotel, your nursing home, whatever. And that's critical. You have to keep that concept in mind, because that is what, in essence, SEAI have agreed to support. You then go and install it. After you've got the letter of offer, don't move before you get the letter of offer, because there is an incentive effect here, and that's quite a legal process that you must get an offer before you install or commission or purchase any equipment. You do the installation. Typically got up to a year to do that, whatever it takes. And at the end of that, you come back to SEAI. You submit to us a completion report, which is linked to the design report. So this is, in essence, confirmation and documentary confirmation that you did what was supported a year ago or 6 months ago or whatever in the formal letter of application and letter of offer. So the completion report will include all the signatures of installers, of if there's building regulations involved, and so on and so forth, confirming that everything has been done as it should, and drawings and so on and so forth of what has been put in. The SEAI will send inspectors to the site, and subject to a successful inspection, you're then onto the payment cycle. So the two outputs of the inspection, two critical outputs in essence, are what we call a start date and a 0 meter reading. So there's a handshake, as you will, at inspection that says, here's the meter readings, here's the start of it. And 0 meter reading is never quite zero. It's like buying, if you're lucky enough to buy a new car, it's, you might have a couple of 100 miles on the clock or whatever. So the 0 meter reading is the start that from there on in, the heat that goes through the meter is clicking up credits, as it were. You submit readings out every quarter. So 3 months on, if somebody's start date was today, the 30th of June, their first quarter will be the 30th of September, and their next one 30th of December, and so on and so forth. There are ongoing obligations. Paddy earlier referred to wood fuel quality, for example. So the obligations in essence are that you continue the contract as is. So you continue to use the fuel that is right for that boiler, the right moisture level, the right quality of fuel. You maintain the equipment as needs be, and you submit meter readings and keep receipts to evidence that you have been using the right fuel. So I just want to go back for a second to the design, because I mentioned earlier how critical the design is. And the design engineer, the role of the design engineer is particularly critical at the application stage. And we refer to what we call the holistic design. So it's all aspects. And this has caught people out. And it's really important to understand these principles. So, you know, a lot of people think, well, it's the boiler or just the heat service. It is, but it's more. So it's all of the heat service. So the design and the drawings, for example, if there needs to include old and new components. So if you are just replacing a boiler, but you're keeping the heat distribution, the pipework, for example, or you're keeping the heat emitters, and we want to see all of that. We want to understand what is this new heating system that's going in. We wanted confirmation from the design engineer, and in essence, this is protecting the final user. Evidence that it will deliver the heat needs, you know, that it has been calculated and sized right. There's nothing worse than putting in a heating system that won't deliver the heat needs. And it has to be right and appropriate for the scale of the operation. We look for historical evidence of fuel use, so we look for receipts of at least a year, because as I said at the start, the core principle of this has been put in to give Ireland evidence that Ireland has shifted somewhat from fossil fuel to renewables. So this, in each application, we need to see that evidence, and all the pieces of the jigsaw add up to the whole contribution of SSRH under those, because we will be recording and reporting back on behalf of the SSRH of how much kerosene we've replaced or how much LPG and so on and so forth. If there's planning permission involved, you need to address that. So the business itself, if you have a nursing home, if you have a hotel, if you have a chicken farm, do you have planning permission for that particular business? And then the project and its implications. So the new heating system, for example, typically there might be a new boiler house, for example, and that might need planning permission. So two aspects of planning permission: business itself and the new heating system. Building regulations, there's always building regulations, regardless of if you're doing anything in a building, there's building regulations. They can be quite simplistic in some cases, and they can be quite complex, again, depending on the scale. As I said earlier, quite related to planning in some ways. If there's new buildings going up as a result of this project, there could be substantial building regulations. If you're using existing buildings, they may be quite minimal. Safety systems in particular, our inspectors are particularly conscious of safety systems. So, and the safety aspects of building regulations, the supplier guidelines for alarms and so on, the fuel storage from a carbon monoxide point of view, and all those safety systems will all be critical. And environmental licensing. Again, this is an area, and Michal later will go into a lot of detail on this here this morning, but it has been one that is actually holding back a number of applications at the moment. And the issue there can be, does this project impact your license? So if you don't need a license to run your business, for example, a nursing home or a hotel typically doesn't have an environmental license. So that's okay. But if you do have an environmental license, and intensive agriculture, for example, which would be poultry and pig rearing, do operate under an environmental license. So you need to know your license, read it. There's probably, not always, but probably a clause in your license that says that should you change your license for your operation, and you're probably licensed for your specific fuel. And if you change that, you have to go through a system which we all will talk about later. So my point here is that the whole design needs to be taken into consideration. And this is at application stage. So for example, we don't necessarily insist on all of them. So planning permission, for example, we do insist that you've addressed it. So we want to see in the design that you and your design engineer understand. For example, you might be saying, we're going to build a new boiler house. We do need planning permission. We will be applying to Mayo County Council for that, and we'll have it in place at completion stage. That's okay from an application point of view, but we need it addressed. We lead the witness, as it were, in that journey, because we don't want you to get in 6 months' time to a stage where we're all looking at each other saying, oh gosh, never thought of the planning or forgot about the planning or whatever. So the SSRH then application leads to an agreement, a letter of offer. As I said earlier, that's for a specific installation, all that particular heat equipment that you've planned and given us drawings of, particular energy efficiency, specific size. The sizing is really important to us because on behalf of our budget control, we need to know what commitments we're making, basically, and the sum of all the heat caps. So you get a heat cap, a limit on how much we would pay for it. You can use more heat, but there's a limit in each individual case on what we will actually support, so that the budget doesn't run away with itself. And as I said earlier, there's ongoing obligations. So just give you a sense of where is the scheme at this point in time. So how many are up and running? How many people have been through this process? So and these red numbers, I'm just using the slide that I had earlier. So we've got 96 applications for biomass boilers, and of those 96, 56 have converted into letters of offer. So there's 56 people out there now at the moment that have letters of offer from SEAI. The other 40 are under review at the moment, and hopefully will be getting letters of offer fairly soon. Of that 56, so that 56 is if I have my maths right here, it breaks down into the next three numbers. The 33 are installing, 16 have gone through inspection at this point in time, and it changes every day, or certainly every week. But 16 have been inspected. 7 are up and running on the payment cycle, and of that 7, 3 have actually got cash from SEAI. So in other words, to get payment, because it's a quarterly basis, you get onto the payment cycle. As I said earlier, if you went onto it today on the 30th of June, you'd only submit your first recording on the 30th of September. And then a month after that, when it goes through the financial payment process within SEI, you get the money. So that's the way the sequence goes. The difference between of the 16 that have been inspected and 7 that are on the payment cycle, there's actually 5 of them at the moment which are waiting resolution of environmental licensing that Mayo is going to talk to us about in a few moments. And so they should be able to hopefully jump through pretty quickly. We've actually done site visits of those, and in essence, they're ready to go once we get the environmental licensing issue sorted. So all of these, we would hope to see these 96, as it were, snake their way through this, and we want to see the 96 clocking up, becoming 106, 126, and so on. As William said at the start, this is a substantial scheme, and we want to see applications coming in year after year, and we need to see that number going up. It didn't move, to be quite frank, didn't move an awful lot during the year of March 2020 to 2021. It has started to move again. So certainly, lots of things slowed down in the economy during the COVID problems, but we're delighted to say that in the last couple of months, we are seeing those applications clocking up at a considerable rate, which is absolutely super. So that's SSRH. It's basically financial support opportunities for commercial, public sector. We see benefits right across the whole supply chain. At SEI, we're very happy to engage with you on a one-to-one basis. If there's any support we can give you, help you get up and running. use less heat, use renewable, and it's open now for applications. So I'll hand back to Sean and see if there's any questions or anything on that.
That's great, and thanks very much, Ray, for your presentation. It's good to see the figures there and that things are moving along. There are a few questions in, Ray, so before we go to Chris and Brendan, maybe we just take a couple of the questions and try and address them. So the first one is from Thomas. If the SSRH was available for industry in ETS sector, would an uptake be improved? So this is non-ETS.
I guess Thomas, it probably would, but and again, I'm not an expert on this, but the way this is seen as at a state aid level, because believe it or not, we do need state aid approval to invest our Irish money in our Irish industry, but the ETS sector is excluded. It's seen as having other policy interventions and other supports. So this scheme is that's kind of a hypothetical question, really. We won't be able to support the ETS in essence.
Yeah. Question from Gareth, Ray. How does the scheme determine if the heat is being used efficiently to maximise the 300 megawatt hour limit, running at 34 boil all year round to maximise the return that's happened in Northern Ireland? Yeah,
no, it's a super question, Gareth, and you allude to what happened in other jurisdictions, and in essence, in essence, that's why we have ended up with somewhat of a complicated scheme. So what we do basically, Gareth, is we look for what we call benchmarks. So Teagasc, for example, have been excellent on this, and they've given us guidelines, benchmarks of energy per bird in poultry or per pig unit. SIPSI, the same, the Chartered Institute of Engineers for civil buildings. There are typical energy use per meter in a nursing home or a guest house and so on. So we use those as guidelines, and we also use historical. So we use both. So with any particular application, we want to know, well, what heat were you using? So show us your bills. And also we do a check against the benchmark. So if you're raising 1 million birds per year or 400,000 birds per year, and both of those go into the equation when we're just deciding what's effective.
Okay, thanks, Ray. And I think the other thing to point out as well is that the tariff rate reduces as the heat output increases. So there's no incentive to produce extra heat isn't that correct?
True, of course. Yeah, absolutely, Sean.
The question from Donald, the design report has a cost upfront early on to the client, which perhaps no guarantee of success. Is there any help here? And I suppose maybe Joanne in her presentation later might be able to point to some supports which might be available to businesses. But Ray, would you like to comment on that question?
Yeah, the basic answer from an SSRH point of view is yes, I accept that there are costs, and to an extent that's why I was saying just do the scope, do the back of the envelope to see is there something in it for you. There shouldn't be any fundamental reason why an application wouldn't succeed. But there is work and there is cost. There's no doubt about that. This is not something you could just do on your lap while you're watching the match on TV or whatever. You do need to engage professionals in this, and you do need to take that into account. It still is very worthwhile. But yeah, it's something you need to put in the mix for sure.
Okay, from William there, if you have availed of a previous grant aid for biomass but have been on non-renewables for the last couple of years, can you apply for this SSRH program?
Yeah, that's a complicated one, Will. So if you look at the basic principles of this, it's a conversion scheme. So if somebody was on biomass, for example, years ago, we don't go all the way back into generations, your grandfather's use and all that type of thing. But if you're on oil or fossil fuels now, you can be supported under this scheme. Now, there's an element of good faith in that. We do look for a year's receipts and a year's of evidence. We certainly wouldn't want to be encouraging people to flip over just for the sake of it. But you're putting in a new system now, a new biomass boiler, and you're currently using fossil fuels, then yes, you can avail it.
I guess the suggestion there would be for Will to contact you, Ray, and maybe discuss
absolutely
scenario or contact the SSRH team.
Yeah, And I think, you know, the other point to make there, Will, is we will discuss this with you, and we're not in the business of trying to catch people out. So, you know, to talk to us, you know, to link that to the previous point, the last thing we want anyone to do is to start running up bills of design reports when they're fundamentally not eligible. We'll talk that through with you.
Okay, comment from Donald about the UK changed the tariff rates over the duration of the scheme. Is there a possibility of the same could happen here? So,
okay. There is. Now, having said that, the terms and conditions outline what's called an annual review of tariffs. So the tariffs are reviewed annually. They've been reviewed twice already. They haven't changed, but anything could happen. There are two levels, I suppose, of protection here. One is that under the normal situation, people who are in receipt of a tariff will hold that tariff. There is, however, a clause in the terms and conditions refers to what's called a windfall or periodic review. That if exceptional things happen in the market, people who are in receipt could find their tariffs changed. So there is a hypothetical possibility of it. It hasn't happened. There's no intention that I'm aware of to make it happen. But yeah, over 15 years, I suppose, in essence, and anything could happen. But certainly, you know, what happened in the UK, and the UK is quite a different scheme. It doesn't have all these controls around energy. You know, as William referred to earlier, a tot has been done in relation to the cost of this scheme at 300 million, the amount of energy that it provides. So once that stays in balance, things that happened in the UK where the whole thing got out of balance, and particularly in Northern Ireland, so the quid pro quo for the complications of the application is that we shouldn't have those type of things. But I would never, I couldn't say that it would never happen. It's hypothetically possible.
Okay, two final questions, Ray. Again from Donald, is there a breakdown of capital for heat pumps and tariff biomass AD scheme supports?
If I understand that question, the heat pumps are quite distinct. So heat pumps, and we dismissed them a little bit at the start, completely different system. Tariff does not apply to heat pumps, completely different payment. It's 30% of the heat pump and the heating system associated with that. No tariffs, you get money up front, but you get no more money. The AD schemes, we don't directly support the AD scheme per se. What we support, very like the biomass, is a boiler that is run on AD gas. So if you happen to have an AD scheme, if it works for you, great. And we will support the heat that comes out of that AD boiler in the same way as it would for the tariffs. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, and just a final question from Adam. Looking at the numbers, is it solely due to a new scheme, or due to challenges faced that only 3 to 4% of applications have made it through to the final payment stage? And if so, what are the challenges mainly faced?
I think you know, yeah, to be fair, Adam, I think it's all those things. There's no doubt that early application had it. It was tough for all of us, to be quite honest. To put my own hands up from an SEI point of view, the detail and the documentation that required, the evidence, the issues that came up with licensing, be it planning or environmental licensing, and so on. That did make it tough and made it slower than we would have liked to get applications onto the process. I think that the new applicants are going to enjoy a little bit of an easier ride now, because it's much clearer. So that's been part of it. There's no doubt that the whole black year of COVID has impacted it as well. Most of the economy stopped. Lots of our applications, as would be expected, hotels and nursing homes just literally stopped. So all engagement with them, by and large, not entirely, but by and large, stopped. So nothing happened with applications that came in from that sector, and that's very understandable. And we took the view that we would leave the applications on process. We wouldn't throw them out or anything like that. With a view to them. So there's been a whole lot of stuff that happened. You know, I think the key message that I would have, Adam, is that people are getting there's money going out the door now. There are people on the payment cycle. We know how to get them through the process, and we expect to see that numbers ramp up again very significantly over the next couple of years.
Okay, just one final question, Ray, that has just come in there. Does the SSRH seem to be bringing renewable heat on the rate Ireland requires to achieve a significant contribution to decarbonising heat, at least the 1,300 gigawatt hours per year? So
yeah, no, it's again, it's a good question. You know, link it back to Adam's question. That the bottom line is no now for the first 2 years, because it's been slow. So we need to get that to get up to that 1,300. I think the figure that William gave is that we're only about 40 at this stage. So it needs to ramp up. Depending on size, we would hope to see of the order of 600 applications going through the process. So that 90 that we've got now, we need to be getting 90 to 100 every year. And if we're getting those kind of numbers through, then we will hit the target.
And I think, Ray, you were saying that it's a 3% of heat that is being targeted.
Yeah, yes. So that 1,300 equates to 3%. So this scheme was designed at a time where the gap to hitting the national targets would look like it was going to be 3 percentage points. We've now moved on to 2030 targets and so on and so forth, and the gap is much bigger. But nonetheless, that's where the whole thing started, and it was about a particular size of intervention, particular money size and particular energy size, and we've a long way to go. Which is good news from the point of view of applicants, in the sense that there's or prospective applicants. There's plenty of room for applicants.
And just, Ray, I suppose from an Airbnb perspective, I could put that 3% in context. We recently published through Renewable Energy Ireland a plan for 40% renewable heat by 2030.
Sure.
And that's 40% is required in order to achieve the 7% reduction in emissions year on year. So we're talking about 3% here. So really, if the truth be known, the SSRH is only scratching the surface of the requirement to achieve the overall decarbonisation of our heating systems, which exist right across many different sectors and the whole country. So
that's absolutely true, Sean. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a good start, but probably will need to be built upon significantly in future years to fulfil the now new ambition, which exists.
Absolutely.
Okay, well,
so
thanks very much.
In that sense, I can't speak for what will happen in the future, but we want to get this one running well, and who knows what interventions will be required in future.
Yeah. Okay, Ray, that has addressed the questions that have come forward to date. Thanks very much, Ray, for your contribution, and indeed it's good that we have an ongoing contact with yourself and your colleagues in SEI from an area perspective in terms of working with you to roll this scheme out in terms of addressing issues and putting forward positive suggestions that are coming from our members. So now we would move on to briefly chat with two of the recipients of the payments through the support scheme for renewable heat. So I would first like to call on Chris Peake. Chris is the financial controller with CJ Shearns, and I just do a short chat with Chris, and then after that I will bring in Brendan. So I think, Ray, you may have to stop sharing your slides. Ray, yes, and Chris is there. So good morning, Chris, and thanks very much for joining us this morning, and
no problem,
for taking time out of your busy schedule. So Chris, maybe if you could just introduce yourself firstly, and just tell us about your business.
Yeah, okay. So as you said, Chris Peake, Group Financial Controller here at CJ Shearns Limited and subsidiaries. I've been with the company for over 6 years now, and I suppose the type of this project, initially I would be included from the CapEx point of view and review of the savings and that, but I suppose my interest kind of grew within it, and I've seen the project out now to the end, and we're nearly at the final stages of it. So that's great. CJ Shearns, they're the largest pellet manufacturing company within Ireland and pellet recovery. our headquarters are here in Mountrath, County Laois, and we've 7 sites across Ireland, including our Coolrain sawmills, our recent acquisition. Within additional to the pallets, then we have a kind of a zero waste throughout our whole process, because we have unrepairable pallets. We send them for wood chip, and they go to garden mulch, and our comfy bed, our equine bedding, and then obviously to biomass. We're WFQA certified. So
okay,
yeah.
And just Chris, what can you tell us where heat is used in your business? In what part of the process do you use heat?
Yeah, so it's a critical part, I suppose, of pallets and to the industries we provide pallets to in the food and pharma and dairy and technology industries. A lot would be exported. So there's the requirement there to heat treat our pallets to those customers and to comply with the ISPM 15 standard that they require. So I know a lot of people think, oh, it's just a pallet, but it's more than just a pallet. It's like what we like to say. It's you know, there's a lot goes into it, a lot of spec, a lot of obviously everything shipping around the world is on a pallet. So it's very important, and the killing process is critical for it, really.
Okay, and you were one of the first companies to avail of the support scheme for renewable heat. Can you let us know what the benefits the SSRH has brought to your business, maybe from an environmental perspective, from a financial perspective? Can you just give us an outline of the benefits that it has brought?
Yeah, so obviously we've changed from fossil fuel, which is a straight off benefit. When we started out the application, we were running around 4 kilns, which was an annual saving there. When Ray was talking about the showing the receipts and whatever, we're around 360,000 litres of caro a year just to run those. So now we have 2 further kilns installed. So if we were still running on fossil fuel today, we would be north of 550,000 litres. So there's a huge saving on that, obviously on the environmental, and also financially the saving on that. But the other side of it, I suppose, is the benefit. A lot of companies that have talked about, very high-end customers that we would deal with, they're all trying to improve their carbon footprint as well. And it's a competitive advantage, I suppose, for us to be able to say that we have displaced all that fossil fuels for them, and all of those pallets that they're going to be shipping around the world, that it has a positive impact from that side of things. For the business then itself, obviously, it is a big investment, but we'll have payback within 4 years, I would imagine. Obviously, we're have the advantage of having our own biomass fuel, so we've a greater saving there. But certainly the figures from Ray earlier, like that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. And then obviously for the 15 years, in the region of 50 to 60,000 per annum to come back in through with the with our usage from the meters readings. So
you would be encouraging other companies to avail of the SSRH, and I suppose, would you have any advice for those companies that are about to embark upon the SSRH journey, having gone through the process yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would be advising it. It's you know, there's no downside to it, really. Obviously, you're displacing fossil fuel, which is a benefit to businesses, but also our individuals within the country. You have the side of it where we're it was time consuming, I suppose. As we were drawn out, it was SSRH, I suppose, and SEI were getting to know it. We obviously hadn't carried out a project like this before, so it was time consuming and over and back with the information, but certainly not on the benefits outweigh the time involved in that. And SSRH were the team in SEI were very helpful. What I would suggest maybe, and I know it was probably difficult with COVID, but say we would have dealt with a couple of different people over time, and time had changed now, and each one very good and helpful. But I suppose for people and individuals, that might be something that SEI could work on, to maybe have a caseworker for each person. But certainly they are there to help and helped us through it, and we'd a lot of different meetings. So ours was probably drawn out a little bit more due to obviously being the start and with COVID, but we're at the final stage of it now. So the benefit of the grant coming in, obviously displacing the fossil fuel and having that as an advantage within our business to say that we are helping on the green agenda is, you know, it's definitely worthwhile doing.
Okay, that's great, Chris, and thanks very much for giving us for joining us this morning and giving us the insights into your own journey on the SSRH. And thanks again for joining us. So I'd now call on Brendan to turn on. Thanks, Chris. Turn on your camera if you could, Brendan, and also to unmute yourself so I can see you, Brendan, and I can hear you now.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, Brendan. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
Thanks very much, Brendan, again for joining us this morning on this webinar. And again, you're in the first recipients of the SSRH application. So could you just tell us, your business is quite different to Chris's and CJ Sheeran. So could you just tell us about yourself, maybe introduce yourself and your business, please, Brendan?
Yeah, well, hello everybody. My name is Brendan Byrne. I'm from Greenfield Mushrooms, and I'm growing mushrooms for nearly 40 years now, which is quite unbelievable. First at Carberry in County Kildare, and from 2010 here on our own farm in the middle of Baltinglass in County Wicklow, Garden County. So we grow high quality, fresh, hand-picked mushrooms for the Irish market. Our mushrooms are collected by the cod family mushrooms, and they're chilled, quality controlled, packed and delivered within 24 hours all around Ireland.
Okay, Brendan, that's great, and thanks for giving us that introduction. And just for people that don't understand, can you maybe explain the importance of heat in the production of mushrooms?
Yeah.
And just how the importance of heat in your business?
Yeah, well, so we have 6 growing rooms here in Baltinglass. Each one has 600 meters of growing area. The growing environment is extremely important, all being controlled by computerized air conditioning boxes in each room. We control the heat, the relative humidity, and the carbon dioxide levels. We are controlling the heat to the rooms 24/7, 52 weeks of the year. So our heat requirement needs to be 100% reliable, and it makes up a lot of our financial budget.
Okay, and as one of the first recipients, like Chris, could you outline the benefits that the SSRH has brought to your business in terms of what volumes of fossil fuel you're displacing, and what type of fuel you were using previously, and indeed what benefit financially maybe it has brought in terms of the grant that you receive?
Yeah, we're 100% biomass here now, you know, with no fossil fuel on site at all. So for our farm, it was a €90,000 investment that we made, which is a big investment for us. But we estimate that our savings would be about 30,000 per year. So that's broken up into a savings against using oil to pellets being around 8,000 per year. And we expect a grant of about 22,000 per year from the SSRH operational payment, you know. Okay. So the payback for us would be 3 years, you know. So, and the scheme runs for 15. So, you know, this was a complete no-brainer for me, really. You know, and I find it's unbelievable in a sense that I say paying Greenfields make a contribution to the safe environment of our planet, really, you know. Okay. So apart from the grant, it really gives me great satisfaction to be burning the renewable wood pellet. You know, the biomass boiler, it's highly efficient, it's reliable, smokeless, it's quiet, it's carbonless, it's really good for everybody.
And is there an added benefit for you then in terms of your customers that you're selling your mushrooms to? Obviously you're demonstrating that you're greener and you're decarbonized, so is that a benefit potentially?
Oh, absolutely. You know, everything has gone green now, you know, packaging, everything. So our customers are very happy. And in actual fact, we supply all our mushrooms to pod mushrooms, family mushrooms, who supply all the major multiples in Ireland, and they are now also turning one of their farms into biomass after seeing what we're doing here, you know.
Very good. And just finally, Finally, Brendan, would you have any advice for any applicants who are about to embark upon the SSRH journey? You'll certainly, by the sound of it, be encouraging people to embark upon the journey, but would you have any practical advice for them as you embark, having gone through the process yourself?
Yes, well, I tell you now, I'd have to thank Donald Gernan there from Chagas, because Donald really gave us very comprehensive projection on the financial situation, and made it very clear that it was financially very sustainable to do so. So do your figures is really important, and you'll see the benefits very clearly. So that's very important. Secondly, deal with a reputable boiler company. I picked a company called Woodco who delivered, installed, maintaining it, and so far it's been a great product. And the big thing there, as Ray said, they took care of all the application and all the admin to seal, which is it's very detailed and very comprehensive, and it can be a bit scary. So for me, do your figures. Get help. As I said, Donald and Chagas were very good to us, and they've done a very good study and projection of how the whole thing works. And then, as I say, Woodco, the boiler company, they took care of all the application. Really, all I had to do was sign on the dotted line. Really, so it's been a great so far.
Yes, indeed, Brendan, and thanks for giving us your insights this morning, and for taking time out of your schedule to join us. I think it's very worthwhile to hear successful case studies of people that have gone through the process. So thanks very much to yourself, and also to thanks to Chris for joining us. So we will now move on to the next part of our agenda. Our next speaker is Noel Gavigan. Noel is the Technical Executive at the Irish Bioenergy Association. And Noel will present to you this morning about sustainable biomass supply chains through the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme, and give an idea of what's involved in terms of supplying the wood and biomass for these systems. So, Noel, it's over to you. We are running slightly behind schedule, so if you could keep to your time, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Noel.
No problem at all. Thanks very much, Sean. Now, you can just let me know if this is coming up all right for you.
Yeah, we can see it. You just have to go to presentation mode. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
You have two slides now. You have your own slide, and you have the next slide side by side.
I'll change that. Now, is that okay?
Not yet. No. Now, yeah, that's just your slide you're presenting. Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. Now, yeah, look, I'll keep this fairly brief. There is a number of webinars we've done. We've presented some of this information before, so anyone that's watching it on a regular basis would have seen some of this information. And you can contact me at any stage as well in terms of the fuel supply or the sustainability side of it. So we run the WFQA, so it's something that you'll find all our details there on the website. Effectively, in this, what we're looking at is the sustainability and of the supply itself, and also the quality. But just to give you a bit of a background on it, in terms of very briefly, in terms of where bioenergy sits in terms of the renewable fuel. In terms of all renewables worldwide, you can see there in the graph on the left, bioenergy is 2/3 of all renewable energy that's used. It's over twice when you add all hydro and wind, solar, geothermal, all that together. It's over twice the resource that's being used around the world at this point in time. So it is a quite, even though we don't hear about it too much, it's the substantial one in the game. In terms of European level, bioenergy provides a little over 10% of all energy in Europe. That's of the entirety, 82% fossils, 10% bioenergy. And then there's about another 7% of other renewables. So again, it's over half of the renewable source across Europe. We don't hear about it too much because you tend to see biomass is larger installations but doesn't be as visible to the general public. The Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme, we set this up originally in 2009. Effectively, it was to ensure we've got a balanced system across the country in terms of quality. We currently have a little over 30 certified suppliers around the country. We have that map there, you'll see that on the website. So we have different tags for different suppliers. Some are supplying wood chip, some are supplying firewood, some supply pellet, and some supply briquette, and some of them are supplying a number of those products. Their project is, the scheme is supported by the Department of Agriculture, and we have received a lot of assistance from NSEI, SEI, and Waterford IT in setting it up originally. So it's running there a little over 12 years at this stage. And we're taking on quite a lot of active members at this point in time, predominantly due to the SSRH growing interest. So what we do in the scheme is we certify suppliers of all wood fuels. So I'll go through those individually very briefly in a couple of seconds. All of those are certified against the European standard. It's now an ISO standard. So that's the detail 17225 if you're interested, parts 1 to 9. And it sets out very clear criteria for each fuel. And I'll go through those briefly in a few moments. But again, if you need a lot of further details on it, or if you're a supplier or a potential customer, just give us a call. We'll give you any information you need on that. Sustainability requirements are a big part of the WFQA. I'll go into that a little bit further later on, but it's vital that the fuel that we use is properly sourced, that it's been harvested and grown in a sustainable way, and that it's not having an impact in that sense. So we have to be very careful about that. And in fairness, we've quite a good system here in Ireland, so we're not too concerned about Irish material. And there's international certification for other sources, but it's something that we do need to keep a close eye on. Again, the scheme is administered by Erbia. We have a steering committee chaired by Eugene Hendrick. We've just launched a 5-year strategic plan there last year, so if you want to look at that, it's on the website. And we have membership right across the island of Ireland, not just in the Republic. So the needs for why we need the certification: first of all, you have to have a reliable fuel. It was very good to hear the 2 examples there in terms of utilising biomass on site. But if the fuel needs to be reliable, you need to ensure that it's consistent in quality, that it's going to provide the right fuel for the boiler you're using. That ensures you've got efficient combustion, you've got clean combustion, which is critical in terms of ensuring low emissions of say, things like particulates. And it also protects the appliance. If you don't have the right fuel type, you can damage your appliance, or you can have difficulty with it combusting within the appliance. So it's just to make sure that those parameters are well put together. And in fairness, we tend not to have too many problems in this area. 15 years ago, quality was an issue, but it appears now most people know what they're doing, and it's not so much of an issue, but it's something that needs to be certified all the same. So obviously, by having that reliability, it increases consumer confidence hugely. And again, it's good to hear those examples, and there's plenty of examples around the country. You tend not to see any major issues with biomass systems, because they're at this stage very well refined, the fuel is well refined, and they tend to work readily. The sustainability certification, this is very important. Again, I'll go into that in a few moments, but again, it's to do with carbon neutrality and obviously protection of ecosystems and sustainability of forest management. It is a requirement to have certified fuel for the support scheme for renewable heat, which Ray was outlining earlier. You do have to have certification. The WFQA is a recognised certification for that. There are others for pellets internationally, and that you could look at as well. But predominantly, the WFQA is recognised here in Ireland, and it's the de facto standard that's used. Very briefly, what we look at is wood logs, not so much of an issue for the SSRH, so I won't dwell on that, but really you're looking at the species, moisture content, and the size and length. Moisture content is a constituent for all wood fuels. It really is probably the most important parameter of them all. When it comes to wood pellets, and again, listening to Brendan earlier in terms of they use wood pellets on the mushroom side of it, you're looking at fines levels, so there isn't too much dust in it. Unlike animal pellets, these are very highly refined and very hard in their construction, so they don't break up too easily, and that ensures that combustion is clean and combustion. You have less issues with that. It's a critical component to ensure that the fuel is consistent, and the dust can cause issues otherwise. Moisture content is very important in pellets. Generally, you'll see it at 8%. It doesn't tend to range much around the 8% level, maybe by about 1%, but that's important. If you have moisture on pellets, if they get wet, they will expand back out, and they will go back into the original sawdust that they were made from. So it's important that they remain dry. So a dry store is important, and in the climate that we have, it's just something that needs to be kept an eye on. But if it's a properly designed store, generally we don't see any issues with it at all. The ash constituents is again an issue with all things, just in terms of how much ash is present. You tend to see wood being very low in ash. If there is a high hardwood content, it will be extremely low. If you see more bark in it, it can go a bit higher. Bark tends to have a lot more ash than the hardwood wood of the tree. But again, certain boilers are made to handle different materials, and your ash content is typically less than 0.5%. So for pellets, so it's not an issue. So, and then delivery is the other thing in terms of ensuring the pellets are delivered in a manner that protects the quality, that they don't get damp, obviously, and they're not too robustly handled that would cause them to break up. Wood chip is a predominant in terms of volume here in Ireland. We have huge amounts of this being used in boilers right across the country. Really what you're looking at here is a size profile. You can see the picture there of the material. Size profile is really to do with well, how well it's going to feed through an auger. So obviously you don't want long pieces, you don't want very large chunky pieces that could potentially block an auger. So really what you're looking at there is how, ensuring that the size is correct, that it'll feed through the system and that it'll burn quickly on the grate. So really how that is controlled is through the raw material. Round log, as you can see in that picture, pulpwood, as you see in the picture, is the best source. But you can use other things like brash. But the chipper type is very important, ensuring that it's broken down to the right level. It used to be a thing years ago where we would do screenings. It's not really required anymore because chippers are that well refined. They tend to produce very good quality material with one pass and at lower cost. Moisture content, again, is very important for this. But what's different here in terms of pellet or other wood fuels, you tend to see moisture content in wood chip ranging quite a lot, up to as far as 50% for some of the larger boilers. So what you tend to see for us in the SSRH and the WFQA, it is absolutely critical that the boiler that you purchase will have a rating, and it'll say you can burn 30% moisture content material or 40% or 25%. And the important thing is quality in that context is what the boiler needs. So if it's rated for 35%, you need to ensure that the wood chip is there on that. So wood briquette then, again, more for domestic market. I won't go into that too much. Again, if you need more details and IDs, you can give us a call. In terms of the emissions, just to give you a quick outline this in terms of the overall biomass portfolio. This is just a figure we've done for heating the average home. We looked at kerosene, and we have a graph here basically where we look at the CO2 level on the left-hand side, your greenhouse gas emissions, and your particulates on the horizontal axis. Now, as you can see, fuels like kerosene and gas are quite high on CO2, are very high in CO2, but low on particulates. And then you have your open fire and your old stove, which are high in particulates, but very low in CO2. And obviously, what we really want is a fuel that brings us down to the 0-0 level if we can get there. That's the theoretical place we want to get to. But you can see there where efficient stoves, eco-design stoves, pellet stoves, and then this is are very low on both. And this is where you will see the wood chip boilers, the wood pellet boilers, all down in the space. And there is a move towards moving the particulates down to 0 as well. With new technology coming on. So it's a really interesting area and something that we're seeing a lot happening on. Sustainability then is a critical component of the fuel supply. We have to ensure that the fuel we're providing is obviously sustainable. There's no point in doing this if we're producing fuels that are causing damage in its production. So really and truly on this, sorry, just jumping a bit forward, where this is controlled from, the SEI have their own report on sustainability of biomass, which is a useful document. It's very much a part of SSRH policy. It's part of the WFQA policy. The RED II directive really sets the agenda for this, which I'll go into more on the next slide. And it sets out the criteria not only for greenhouse gas emissions, but also protection of our ecosystems. So this last slide is really a layout of what the SSRH is, or the RED II is, in terms of its requirements. It looks at 3 main areas. One is land use criteria. So you have to ensure that the material that you're using is legally felled. So our felling licensing system here in Ireland looks after this quite well for us. So we don't have to go into any further details on that. But we obviously have to ensure that the material coming in is coming from properly managed forest, that the sustainability of the forest production capacity is protected, so that you're maintaining a good working forest and by harvesting it and having a proper harvest plan. So that's critical for sustainability and to ensure that we're not causing damage, that we're fitting in with the normal forest management. Greenhouse gas criteria is again another main component of RED 2. There is a requirement there that you have 70% reduction as of this year in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, and then 80% by 2026. Now, most of our wood chip, our wood pellet, are all at the 90% level plus in reductions of greenhouse gas, so there's not an issue there, you know, and better than 90%. So we don't see that as an issue. Biodiversity protection is one of the pillars of the RED 2 directive, and again, this is about ensuring we protect forest regeneration, going back to proper harvest management. We are protecting the sensitive areas, waterways, wetlands, peatlands, all of the sensitive ecosystems that are there. We need to ensure that our operations are not going to impact that. And again, the felling licensing system does a very good job of ensuring that. So we piggyback on that quite a bit in terms of certification of fuel. We don't look for our suppliers to double up on the job of reporting to us and reporting on felling licensing. One covers most of it. And then the last part of that is, again, protecting soil quality and biodiversity. So there's a whole framework within that. Again, all of it, or most of it, is actually transposed into the felling licensing system, which we can use and take on board. So that's just a quick quick tour of what the WFQA is about. Again, it's about the quality of the fuel and ensuring that the fuel is sustainably managed and sourced and produced. And again, if anyone is interested in more on that, you can contact us at any point in time. And you know, in terms of your look as a supplier, or if you're looking at buying material, by any means, give us a call. We're more than happy to chat about that. So that's basically it. Sean, I might just pass back to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Noel. And as Noel said, if you want further information, please consult the website www.wfqa.org, or indeed www.airbia.org, and all our contact information is available there. So if you can stop sharing, Noel, and we move on to our next speaker. So next speaker is Micheál Fogarty. Micheál works for a company called Keystone Global, who are an air emissions modeling company. Micheál's topic this morning is the air emission screening framework for installing biomass heating systems on intensive agricultural EPA licensed sites. So just to give us a very brief background here, we became aware in Airbia of an issue on EPA licensed sites where the maximum size of a boiler that could be installed was 250 kilowatt. This was in early 2020, this became apparent. So we engaged with the EPA, we engaged with Keystone, and we have developed a framework which has been approved by the EPA in principle. And they now are changing the requirement to allow installation of up to 1 megawatt without triggering an EPA license review. So Micheál will explain further. So I'd like to hand over to Micheál, and thanks for joining us this morning. I know you're a busy man with plenty of frameworks to be developed. So we'll give you 10 minutes, Micheál, if you could. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a million, Sean. Can you hear me, Sean?
We can indeed, and we can see your first slide, yeah?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Sean, for having me and for inviting me to do this talk. My name is Micheál Fogarty, as Sean said, from a consultancy called Keystone Environmental. And we specialize in air quality, and I will be giving you a quick presentation this morning on the compliance with air quality standards for EPA licensed SSRH applicants. So as Sean said, the Airbia became aware of an issue with the SSRH uptake on licensed intensive agricultural sites. These sites are required to comply with air quality legislation. And it also, EPA did not have a mechanism for the approval of boilers, biomass boilers that sat between 250 kilowatts and 1 megawatt. So this was a requirement of the SSRH to be compliant with your EPA license. And to install a biomass boiler that was above 250 kilowatts would technically require an EPA license review, and there is a time and cost issue associated with that. So Airbia approached EPA on this issue, and EPA agreed to look at this on the basis of scientific data and air modeling. So if you could demonstrate that these small-scale biomass boilers were not going to result in air pollution, was it okay to, it could potentially be okay to approve them as minor emission sources. And so that became the objective of the task. We initially started talking about this well over a year ago at this stage, back in February 2020, pre-pandemic actually. And yeah, sorry, that's just, I suppose we did talk about it because we are engaged in a significant amount of air quality work, including modelling assessments. So we initially agreed a scope of work. We brought this scope of work, IRBA brought this scope of work to EPA, and it was to get feedback, and a rough framework for the project was agreed. We finalised our contracts, and we funded this piece of work through the IRBA, SEAI, IFA, Towards Zero Carbon, CHP Mechanical, and Woodco. So the scope of works included a review of preliminary model, or a review and preliminary modelling to develop an assessment framework that adopted technical emissions data on all types of biomass boilers that were installed in the Irish market. That was undertaken by IRBA. And then Catestone came in and adopted brought standard dispersion modelling techniques to those emissions to see, first of all, was it feasible to develop some sort of a framework that EPA could agree to adopt to classify these sources as minor emission sources, and secondly, was it feasible to adopt it, and then what would it look like when it was actually adopted? So that's what the scope of work started out at. The outputs from this are the technical detail that sits behind the modelling assessments, the countless biomass boiler emission sources that we looked at. I'm not going to go into that level of detail, but the outputs were, we've developed a technical guidance document that describes the framework for the assessment of air quality impacts, and then sitting underneath that is a single screening framework document for if you've got a single biomass boiler within your site boundary, within the licence boundary, or if you've got multiple biomass boilers within the license boundary, you can adopt the multiple boiler screening framework document. If you comply with EPA, or if you comply with these, with either one of these, in theory, EPA have stated that they will that they can approve the source or sources as a minor emission source. If not, you can move on to detailed. A more detailed dispersion modelling that would generally be done for larger sources where there is a potential for air quality impacts beyond the site boundary. So just a very, very quick run overview of what's required as part of the screening framework, what an applicant would be required to know. So it's proximity to urban centres. The reason for that is as you get closer to urban centres, background levels of air pollution increase, and that could impact your ability to install another source of emissions. Proximity to other non-domestic type boilers, so other commercial boilers that have exhaust emissions. Maximum fuel moisture content, boiler stack height, the technical aspects of the operations on the site, the minimum distance between the boiler stack and your site boundary, and then boiler stack parameters that would be provided by the manufacturer, including things like the internal stack diameter, stack temperature, minimum exit velocity, the maximum emission rate of NOx, and the maximum emission rate of particulate matter. Now, all that information is readily available from all boiler manufacturers because they've had to go through compliance testing. So the key information required, I suppose, from an applicant's point of view to understand if they can, what gets through the framework and what doesn't. So if the proposed boiler to complete the framework, you need to determine if the proposed boiler is located in a rural area more than 1.2 kilometres from the nearest house of an urban centre with a population between 250 and 500 people. And you need to know if the proposed boiler is within a rural area more than 2 kilometres from the nearest house of an urban centre with a population of 500 or more. Again, this has got to do with background concentrations that may impact on your ability to increase pollutant levels in the area. And then a technical requirement about how close is your nearest commercial type biomass. Is it a biomass boiler or any type of boiler, any type of combustion source? Is it more than, are you more than approximately 500 meters away from that? There's a technical requirement that we developed as part of the framework. So the current status is that the framework that we developed, the technical aspects of that, it's been turned into an online tool for easy access. You answer these questions, and then from that, it will, based on the answers provided, it will tell you whether you comply with the framework or not. If you comply, it can be submitted as part of a condition 1.3 approval to EPA. And if not, a more detailed air dispersion model is required to demonstrate that you don't cause air pollution. This has been approved in principle by EPA. However, the first applicants are just being lodged to the system as we speak, and so we await comment on technical comment from EPA on those applications. There's 5 sites in the SSRH cycle that are waiting payments that are part of the initial batch of assessments that are being put through this system, and they're being put through manually at the moment before the online tool is developed. So a key part of this is it avoids if you can demonstrate that you don't cause air pollution and your boiler is less than 1 megawatt in size, it negates the requirement for an EPA license review. It will instead be passed to EPA enforcement for notification called a condition 1.4 approval to allow the biomass boiler to be listed as a minor emission source on your official license documentation. So from the first 5 projects that are going through, it looks like 2 the screening framework that we developed is applicable. There are 3 that were not applicable to the screening framework due to proximity to towns, proximity to small urban centres, or proximity to neighbours that are also burning combustion, or that also have combustion sources at the site. And so a detailed dispersion model is required to account for all those sources of emissions and determine that there is still not air pollution caused beyond the site boundary. And working to EPA's enforcement requirements for condition 1.4 approval, EPA generally state that it takes 1 month. They provide a 1 month turnaround on these. So the next steps are we await comment from EPA on the initial 5 applications, and we're expecting that there will be minimal, maybe minor tweaks to the system that's proposed. We will publish the framework and the reports that underpin it. We'll also work at finalising the development of an online tool. We'll complete training with stakeholders once that's done. And we're hoping that our SSRH are hoping to see plenty of applications from licensed intensive agricultural sites once that happens. So that's just a very quick overview of how the SSRH scheme fits into the general air quality legislation and requirements that are needed for compliance with that aspect of EPA's licensing system. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
That's great, Micheál. Thanks very much for your very swift presentation and for taking us through the main points associated with your work. And indeed, I'd like to formally thank you and acknowledge you for your work, because a lot of time and effort went into developing this report in conjunction with ourselves. I'd like to acknowledge that time and effort and for getting this issue over the line and addressed. And just to re-emphasize that this particular screening tool or framework is only for EPA licensed intensive agricultural sites. So that's your pig, your poultry, more than likely, those type of farms and operations. So that's great, Micheál. Thanks very much. So we will now move on to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Joanne Sheehan. Joanne is the Senior Executive in Climate Action and Sustainability at Enterprise Ireland. And Joanne will speak to you this morning about supporting businesses to embark on the heat decarbonisation journey. So I'd like to, maybe Micheál, if you could stop sharing, that would just give Joanne the chance to share your screen. And thanks very much, Joanne, for taking time out of your busy schedule to present this morning. We are running a small bit over time, but you have 20 minutes, and then we will just take any questions. There's 1 or 2 questions for some of our previous speakers, but we'll take 1 or 2 questions at the end and just wrap up then as close as possible to 11:30. So over to you, Joanne. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation.
Great, thanks. Can you see? Yeah.
We can indeed, Joanne. Yeah, we can. Yeah.
I'm just going to pop my video off this morning to go through it, but I'll pop back on at the end for questions if that's okay.
No problem.
Okay. So I'm going to go through Enterprise Ireland's climate action funding supports. So I'll briefly just talk about the business benefits and then go through the climate action voucher, the Green Start and Green Plus and Green for Micro, and then some other supports and resources that are available for businesses. So the business benefits are more clear than ever for going green. It includes opportunities to win new business by putting your company in a better position when it comes to going for public and private tenders. As well, credible sustainability reporting is becoming more and more important for customers and investors. Sustainability and innovation are interlinked, and exploring sustainability opportunities can lead to higher value-added products, services, and business models. And finally, efficiency in relation to energy use, water, and materials drives cost savings across businesses. So to start with, I'm going to talk about the Climate Action Voucher. So this is a new voucher, a grant that's available for project costs of up to €1,800 at a grant rate of 100% funding. Eligible cost elements includes the service provider, technical and advisory costs for 2 days at €900 a day. And the assignment period is over 6 weeks. And this is available to high potential startups, SMEs and large Enterprise Ireland and Údaros na Gaeltachta clients. You need to, for a company must choose a green service provider from Enterprise Ireland's directory of green service providers. Companies must select a service provider from this directory, and we would always recommend a company talks to at least 3 before deciding. The application form is designed to be straightforward and the turnaround time is quick. In some instances, we've had a same-day turnaround, so from when somebody submits an application to sign off on the grant agreement. It's a limit of 1 voucher per company, but where there are separate sites and operations, they can apply for up to 3. And European state aid applies under de minimis for the voucher. So eligible activities include resource efficiency assessment, renewable energy potential, introduction to corporate sustainability, and introduction to circular economy thinking. Under resource efficiency assessment, resources can include energy, water, or raw materials, and the main outcome from the 2 days would be generally a register of opportunities. The green service provider will identify resources, efficiency, and cost savings and will provide information on the costs and payback of those opportunities identified. It can include, the opportunities, I suppose, can include capital projects. So for example, to upgrade lighting to LED, installation, rainwater harvesting to replace old water tanks, fixing air compressor leaks, which is a very common issue with companies we're finding, or to reduce waste to landfill. It also includes feasibility studies, procedural process changes, and staff training and awareness. And opportunities can be mixed. So the identified opportunities can be mixed from short to longer term, from no to low to high cost potential projects as well. And I suppose the climate action voucher is there to provide a plan for a company to work off. So the second option is renewable energy potential. And the green service provider assesses the business and the site's energy use and recommends the most appropriate renewable energy options for the business. All renewable energy technology can be considered. So that includes solar, wind, turbines, heat pumps, and of course, biomass boilers. And again, the main outcome will be a register of opportunities for the company to follow up with. The third option is corporate sustainability, and the service provider here reviews the company's current activities and then provides advice about developing a policy and initial action plan around corporate sustainability. And lastly is the introduction to circular economy, looking beyond the make waste linear economic model to a circular model that minimizes waste. Here, the service provider will work with the company to develop plans and circular economy ideas for a more circular product, process, or service. More information on the application process, eligible activities, and guidelines can be found on the link that is just there on the presentation. And we expect with the Climate Action Voucher that this will lead to further projects. That's the aim of the voucher. And the aim as well is to engage as many companies as we can with this, whether they're starting out on their sustainability journeys or have already started. Most applications received to date have been to carry out a resource efficiency assessment, and the focus has been on energy, but plenty of companies have a good handle on that. So I suppose there are other opportunities like renewable energy or CSR strategy that is available as well through the Climate Action Voucher. Next is Green Start. So Green Start allows for project costs of up to €6,300 at a grant rate of 80% funding. The eligible cost element is the service provider training and advisory costs for up to 7 days at €900 a day. And the assignment period is over 3 to 6 months. It's available to high potential startups, SMEs and large client companies of Enterprise Ireland, local enterprise offices, Údarás na Gaeltacht and IDA client companies. And again, the Enterprise Ireland Directory of Service Providers is used, but in this case it's optional. So companies may select a service provider not part of our green directory in some instances that might have specific overseas expertise. De minimis applies again, and the companies can apply for up to 3 green starts once the follow-up project is a step up and each green start covers a different area. So I suppose Green Start allows for basic environmental energy, carbon, waste management system development. It assists with the preparation of these basic management systems to measure, manage and report based on plan, do, check, act philosophies. And it allows the service provider to put forward suggestions on the format and frequency of reporting following that. The range of activities include carbon footprinting, to circular economy, to employee engagement, to sustainable strategy. And as well as that, aligning to national or international frameworks, like for example, Board Bria Origin Green or the Carbon Disclosure Project. So you can use Green Start to support the process of aligning to those types of frameworks. So, sorry, one second. So if you take a look at the guidelines, information is provided under 14 different headings, and these headings detail, I suppose these headings allow or provide details that will help the company structure their project if they're not sure. So for example, here we have environmental management system development, and there's a significant number, or there's detail that's provided around that for a company to use to help them support the project. Taking things up to the next level is Green Plus, and this is for project costs of up to €100,000 and a grant of up to 50% funding. Eligible cost elements includes service provider training and advisory costs of up to €900 a day, or up to 10 project team member salary costs up to €200 a day, or training course fees for specialized external courses that support the project goals. And the assignment period here is over 6 to 12 months. It's available to SMEs and large client companies of Enterprise Ireland, Údarás na Gaeltacht and IDA. And again, the Enterprise Ireland Directory of Green Service Providers is optional here, but in most cases, about 90% of projects that come through do use consultants from this directory. So I suppose again, it's the development. Green Plus allows for the development of environmental, energy, carbon, water management systems and frameworks, or for the company to align itself to international standards like ISO 14001, 50001, or to align to sustainability frameworks and disclosure platforms. Again, the range of activities go from everything from carbon footprinting to sustainable packaging to eco-design. And I suppose I suppose in many ways it's similar. There's similarities with Green Start, but it allows for a company to go on a deeper level of detail, or to go down into a deeper level of detail to develop a project and to develop the potential for a further project to come out of it. So for more information on Green Plus, you can click on the link just there as well. This is the link to our directory of green service providers. We have 60 consultants and it's growing all the time. And we break it down. Within that, there's a breakdown of 25 functional experiences. So a company can use a filter to find the consultant that will match exactly what they're looking to do. And all of the company's contact details are included. A company doesn't have to start with a voucher and then move to Green Start and then move to Green Plus. If, for example, a business is under pressure from their supply chain to align to international standards like ISO 15001, this could take up to 6 months. So you can go straight to Green Plus in an instance like that. So I suppose what's required for a company to transform, and what does that look like? Well, it requires commitment and vision of senior management and the formation of a team within the company, as well as that gathering data and setting up systems of profile resources, creating action plans across the business and monitoring and reviewing those impactive actions, and bringing sustainability into company strategy, as well as for the company to view sustainability as an opportunity. The company needs to be open to partnering with other companies within their industry or suppliers or technology centers, and also be open and aware of their need to communicate results and targets as transparently as possible. So these are just some of the green starts that we've had, some case studies, everything from life cycle assessment to going down the ISO 50001 route, or developing a water steward standardship from different companies. And you can find much more case studies on the link at the bottom there. And it's worth having a look to see what other companies have done and how they found the process in relation to Green Start and Green Plus specifically. So I'm also just going to touch on Green for Micro. So this is a free pilot program open to all micro enterprises with up to 10 employees and trading for less than 6 months, with a turnover of €30,000 per annum in 2019 to 2020. And this allows for 2 days of mentoring and consulting over 6 to 12 weeks. The company completes an online application available on the local enterprise office website. And if the application is successful, the local enterprise office advisor and client can choose an appropriate expert from either a local mentor panel or from the Green Directory. Upon project completion, the final report and invoice are submitted by the consultant to the relevant local enterprise office. And the company will complete a feedback form following the programme. So this is open to smaller companies, and it's just another support to start companies on their journeys in relation to sustainability. The eligible activities are similar to those of Green Start and Green Plus and the Climate Action Voucher, resource efficiency assessment, renewable energy potential, environmental management, etc. So for more information on Green for Micro, you can go to your local enterprise office website /green. I've also just included links to some of the other Enterprise Ireland supports or D&I supports, who they're available to, who they exclude, and some of the funding details around them, as these might be appropriate if you're a bit further down on your sustainability journey. As well as that, third level collaboration opportunities and grants that are available to companies. Similarly, who they're available to, who they exclude, and some of the funding details. And finally, just some other resources for companies out there in relation to climate action and sustainability. So everything from SkillsNet to SEAI's website, the EPA, Enterprise Ireland, the Directory of Green Service Providers, a Climate Jargon Buster, and some of the other tech centres and tech gateways as well. So for more information on the Climate Action Fund and the funds, the grants that I've gone through today, go to globalambition.ie/climate-action. Or on Green for Micro, go to localenterprise.ie/green, or you can email us, the team in Enterprise Ireland, directly at green@enterprise-ireland.com. That's it.
Okay, thanks very much.
The last thing, sorry, just the last thing to mention is
yes, indeed, Joanne.
Also a webinar series that we're having at the moment. You'll notice that one is happening actually today. There's one for the food and beverage sector that we've had, one for manufacturing, and one coming up for ICT services. All of these will be available on the globalambition.ie/climate action website, and they cover the funds that are available, or the Climate Action Fund grants that are available, and yeah, the webinar recordings are available, so you can check those out.
Okay, that's great, Joanne, and thanks very much for your presentation. It just shows you that there is quite a lot of support available out there for companies or enterprises that would like to embark upon this sustainability journey. If I could ask maybe Noel and just any of our participants that have remained with us to maybe turn on your cameras. And there aren't that many questions, but just one maybe for you, Joanne. In terms of the SSRH, would you see the potential for businesses that are considering embarking upon the SSRH journey, that they could avail potentially of one of the voucher schemes which you have identified there to carry out feasibility studies around their installation? I'm just trying to link what you're doing and the SSRH. So is there an opportunity there?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So something like the Climate Action Fund you can use to look at developing renewable energy specifically, and it can also be used for feasibility studies. So it's an option to engage with maybe a consultant who has expertise in the SSRH area and to start to develop that. You know, you might have lots of other, I suppose, you might have other areas covered and you might want to focus on this specifically, and you can use the Climate Action Fund for something like that for sure. Yeah. Okay, that's very good. Okay, I don't see any questions in, Joanne, specifically for you. So I think you've got off lightly from the point of view of questions. So, but again, thanks very much for your attendance this morning. I just had one question there from Noel. I answered it live, but answered it in the, Noel, it was a question on the rates in terms of the WFQA from Will. Do you want to just comment on that? Is once it's one size fits all for all WFQA fees, or are there different fees of different size businesses? So
yeah, we have two scales basically for depending on the size of the business. There are some small operations, maybe 1 or 2 employees, and then there are obviously, you know, we've some people that are providing small amounts of firewood, and then we've some people that are providing 30,000-40,000 tons of wood chip. So we have a 2 fees on that, and you can depending on the size the person is at, really.
And the best thing to do is to contact you for further information and to discuss it further. Yes. Okay. We had a couple of questions there about the Catestone report and when will it be available. So just the report will be published in the next few weeks. EPA, as Micheál has said, have approved in principle the categorization of boilers up to 1 megawatt as minor emissions points. What we are doing at the moment is the 5 SSRH projects that are awaiting on the payment cycle or waiting on payments currently have made their submissions to the EPA on a paper-based system, and they will hopefully be approved. And any feedback that comes as a result of those approval processes will be incorporated into the final report, and the final report will then be released and published at that stage. But if anyone has any questions specifically on the Catestone report, or indeed about the licensed sites, feel free to get in touch with myself, or indeed I can then put you in touch with Micheál, and we can give you whatever information you require. I suppose I don't see any other questions. Ray, have you any concluding remarks to make maybe? I just see you're on screen there before we finish up, as we're at 11:28 and we hope to finish by 11:30, but just you've obviously heard from Micheál, you've heard from Noel and Joanne, so would you have any concluding remarks just to close up
I don't think anything major, Sean, but just to say I think the whole thing is hung together very nicely. Even the link there to Joanne's, the compatibility there between both. So yeah, great. And just to say again to anybody who's on the call, if you have any questions, come back to us directly at SEI, and we'll work with you. Okay. So just to conclude, there are a couple of minor pieces of housekeeping. The first thing is that this is our last webinar. We're taking a break for July and August because people are on annual leave, and it's the summertime, and people are out and about and probably don't want to be sitting listening to webinars, more enjoying hopefully the fine weather which we're going to get over the next 2 months. So we will be taking a break for July and August, and we'll be returning with webinar number 25 in September, early September.
But if there is anyone online with us today, participating today, that would like to present in the autumn on one of our webinars, please get in touch with us and we can incorporate you into the schedule and just discuss what potential presentation you could give. The other piece of business or housekeeping is that the recording of this webinar will be available on our website, and we could also make, subject to approval of the attendees, make some of the presentations available as well, because there's quite a few links in Joanne's presentation there, which might be very beneficial from a business point of view. And I suppose just to finally thank all our speakers, I'd like to thank William Walsh, Paddy Phelan. I'd like to thank Ray for taking time out to prepare and to attend today. To our two recipients, grant recipients, Chris Peake from CJ Shearns and Brendan Byrne from Greenfield Mushrooms. Thank Noel for his presentation. Also thank to Micheál Fogarty, and thanks to Joanne Sheehan from Enterprise Ireland. And indeed, thank you all for joining us this morning. It was slightly longer than usual, but again, thanks for sticking with it, and good to see that our attendance figures have stayed up right throughout. So the final thank you, I'd like to just thank and acknowledge the work of Teresa O'Brien. There was a lot of planning went into getting this event running smoothly, and it has run very smoothly. We did practice runs and we did all sorts of things. So thanks to Teresa for her work in terms of advertising, getting it all set up and making sure it runs smoothly. Without Teresa, we wouldn't be able to run these events. Without further ado, we will conclude. I wish you all a nice summer, and thank you again for joining, and we hope that you can join us on the next occasion. See you everyone. Bye-bye.